What's up, sports fans? Welcome to your NCAA Week 10 recap. I'm going to start by saying that I did not produce an NFL video last week. I'm going to hopefully have a 2-week NFL update video that's going to be up in the next day. That may or may not happen. I'm also working on an NBA video since the NBA season is well underway. But this video, my friends, is about the college football season. 10 weeks down. Every week, less teams are eligible for the college football playoff, but every week there's some crazy upsets once again. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to look at the top 25, see how each of them did. Then we're going to look at the conferences as well as the playoff odds. We're going to do a little Heisman watch, and we're going to do my favorite segment at the end where we look at what's it going to take for all of our teams to get into that college football playoff. There's only 4 spots. There's a lot of different teams in the mix for it. Start off with number 1, Georgia. Played against South Carolina. They started that game with an 89% win probability. They had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter, and then after a back-and-forth second quarter, Georgia only had a 14-7 lead at halftime, but they did play some great defense in the second half, and they won the game 24-10. So Georgia stays number 1 in the country according to the College Football Playoff Ranking Committee. Number 2, Alabama had a great rivalry matchup against number 19 LSU. Despite LSU being so highly ranked, Alabama started this game with an 89% win probability. They had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter, and they built upon it to have a 14-3 lead at halftime. LSU was still in striking distance with the score as 21-10 after the third quarter, but Alabama held on to win 24-10. Alabama stays at number 2, and LSU does not fall out of the top 25. They will slide down to number 24. Number 3, Notre Dame, played against Wake Forest. They started with an 88% win probability. They had a nice 7-3 lead after the first quarter and then exploded in the second quarter, scored 24 points in one quarter. Notre Dame led 31-10. And Wake Forest actually scored 27 points in the second half, but Notre Dame was able to score, and the game was never that close. So despite the defense giving up plenty, Notre Dame held on to win 48-37. Notre Dame stays number 3 in the country. Number 4, Clemson had a good matchup against number 20, NC State. NC State actually had a 14-7 lead after the first quarter, and NC State was still in the lead 21-17 at halftime. Clemson then came out with 2 touchdowns, and Clemson had a 31-21 lead after the third quarter. NC State scored a touchdown with 12 minutes left. They were still down by 3 points. Clemson scored a touchdown with 6 minutes left to put it at 38-28. NC State did kick a field goal with 1:51 left to only be down by a touchdown, and they did march the ball to the 33-yard line before they ran out of time, and Clemson got a nice 38-31 victory. Clemson stays at number 4, and NC State will slide down to number 23. Number 5, Oklahoma, played against number 11, Oklahoma State, in another thrilling rivalry game. Oklahoma had a nice 14-10 lead after the first quarter, and in the second quarter, both teams scored 52 points in one quarter. Oklahoma scored 3 touchdowns, and Oklahoma State scored 4 touchdowns. That's right, we saw a quarter with 7 touchdowns and a field goal, and at halftime, this game was tied 38-38. Oklahoma then had a great third quarter and scored 10 points to lead 48-38. Oklahoma State scored a touchdown with 12:30 left. They were now all of a sudden down by 3, 48-45. Oklahoma came right back and scored a touchdown in the next minute. They led 55-45. Guess what? A minute later, Oklahoma State scores a touchdown with 10 minutes left. They're still down 55-52. Then it was quiet, and Oklahoma did score a touchdown with 42 seconds left to give them a 62-52 victory. Oklahoma stays at number 5 in the country, and Oklahoma State drops to number 15. Definitely an exciting game and a big win for Oklahoma. Number 6, Ohio State had a matchup against Iowa. Ohio State started their game with an 85% win probability, but after the first quarter, they were tied 10-10. Both teams were able to score touchdowns, and then Iowa scored 2 touchdowns in a row to jump out to a 31-17 lead at halftime. Iowa then came and dropped another touchdown in the third quarter to lead 38-17. And just when you think Ohio State might have a comeback, Iowa scores 17 points in the fourth quarter. Iowa wins 55-24. They dismantle number 6 Ohio State. Ohio State falls to number 13, and Iowa, despite being a 3-loss team, breaks into the top 25 at number 20. A huge upset, one of the biggest upsets that we will see all season. Number 7, Penn State, had a very nice matchup against number 24, Michigan State. Penn State started this game with an 82 win probability. Definitely they were looking to bounce back after their loss to Ohio State, and obviously they're still a very good team. Penn State had a 14-7 lead after the first quarter. I believe this game had a bit of a rain delay issue. Michigan State did score a touchdown to tie the game 14-14 at halftime. In the third quarter, Michigan State came out with a touchdown. Penn State then came back strong with 10 points. Penn State had a 24-21 lead after the third quarter. Michigan State then kicked a field goal to tie the game 24-24. The game was quiet all the way up until the end when Michigan State knocked in a 34-yard field goal to pull off an upset and hand Penn State back-to-back losses. Michigan State gets that win 27-24. Penn State will drop all the way to number 14, and Michigan State will make a big jump to number 12. Number 8, TCU played against Texas. TCU had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter. It got a little bit bigger. They had a 17-7 lead at halftime, and the defense was outstanding as Texas was held scoreless, and TCU got a simple 24-7 victory. TCU made some moves, jumped up to number 6 in the country now. Number 9, Wisconsin played against Indiana. Wisconsin started this game with an 80% win probability. Indiana actually had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter. Wisconsin led 14-10 at halftime. Then they actually had a 24-17 lead after the third quarter, and then they dominated the fourth quarter and finished off 45-17 in a game that was close most of the way, but Wisconsin does get that win. They're going to move up to number 8. Number 10, Miami, had a great matchup against number 13, Virginia Tech. Nobody scored in the first quarter. The game was tied 0-0. Miami played a great second quarter. They led 14-3 at halftime. Both teams then put up a touchdown, and Miami had a 21-10 lead after the third quarter, and Miami's defense held on to get a 28-10 victory that puts Miami at number 7 in the country as Virginia Tech falls down to number 17, keeping Miami's college football playoff hopes alive. Number 12, Washington, had a good matchup this week against Oregon. Washington started this game with an 84% win probability. Oregon actually had a 3-0 lead at the end of the first quarter. Then Washington had a fantastic second quarter to lead 17-3 at halftime, and they scored 3 touchdowns in the third quarter. Washington exploded and won 38-3. Washington is now going to break into the top 10 again, as they're going to be the number 9 team coming into next week. Number 14, Auburn, played against Texas A&M. Texas A&M actually had a 3-0 lead after the first quarter, much like Oregon in the last game. Auburn then has a great second quarter, scoring 3 touchdowns, and they led 21-13 at the half. Auburn expanded on their lead. They led 35-20 after the third quarter. Then both teams scored a touchdown, and Auburn held on to win 42-27. Auburn moves into the number 10 spot in the country. Number 15, Iowa State played a great game against West Virginia. West Virginia actually had a strong 10-0 lead after the first quarter. Then West Virginia kept playing great, leading 20-3 at halftime. Iowa State did start to come back, scoring 10 points, so that West Virginia was only up 20-13 after the third quarter. Iowa State kicked a field goal with 7 minutes left to be down 20-16. Iowa State then got stopped on their next possession, and despite not scoring any points in the second half, West Virginia holds on to win 20-16. Great upset for them. Iowa State's going to fall to number 21 in the country, and West Virginia, surprisingly, is not going to be in the top 25, but they're playing some good football, and they had a great win there. Number 16, Mississippi State, played against University of Massachusetts this week. Mississippi State had a 97% win probability. They had a 10-3 lead after the first quarter, and UMass had a fantastic second quarter, and UMass led 20-13 at halftime. Mississippi State then responded with back-to-back touchdowns, and Mississippi State had a 27-20 lead after the third quarter. UMass then kicked a field goal with 8 minutes left. They were down 27-23. Mississippi State sealed the deal with a touchdown to win 34-23. They're going to stay at number 16. Number 17, USC played against number 22, Arizona, in a big matchup to decide who could potentially be in the Pac-12 championship game. USC had a 7-0 lead after the first quarter. Then they had 2 more touchdowns to lead 21-6 at the half. Arizona did score 2 touchdowns, so USC only led 28-20 after the third quarter. USC then scored a touchdown with 14 minutes left to lead 35-20. Arizona came right back with 12 minutes left, scored their touchdown. They were down 35-27. Arizona backed it up with a touchdown with 8:23 left in the game and converted the 2-point conversion. The game was tied 35-35. Then USC turned on the Jets, scored back-to-back touchdowns, sealed the deal, winning the game 49-35. USC moves up to number 11 in the country, and Arizona will drop out of the top 25. Number 18, UCF played against SMU. The game was tied 7-7 after the first quarter. UCF then broke into a 21-14 lead at halftime. They were only up 28-24 after the third quarter. UCF then kicked a field goal with 14 minutes left to make it 31-24. SMU got stops 3 times in the fourth quarter. UCF played some good defense to hold on to win 31-24. They're going to stay at number 18 in the country. Number 21, Stanford had another big Pac-12 matchup against number 25, Washington State. Nobody scored in the first quarter. The game was tied 0-0. Washington State led 14-7 at the half. Stanford scored a couple touchdowns, and they got into the lead, 21-17 after the third quarter. Washington State got a good touchdown with 7 minutes left. All of a sudden, Wazoo in the lead, 24-21. Stanford got stopped twice, and Washington State holds on to win 24-21. Stanford drops out of the top 25 as Washington State moves up to number 19. Number 23, Memphis played against Tulsa. Memphis had a 14-7 lead after the first quarter. That lead stayed the same as they were up 21-14 at the half. Tulsa got shut down in the second half, and Memphis cruised to win 41-14, as Memphis will slide into the number 22 spots. Now, there was Stanford being the only team that fell out of the top 25 this week. We have one opening. Actually, no, there was 2 teams that fell out of the top 25. Arizona being the other one. Northwestern played against Nebraska. The game was tied 7-7 after the first quarter. Northwestern had a 17-14 lead at the half. And Nebraska actually had a very nice third quarter. And Nebraska was in the lead 24-17. Northwestern then scored a touchdown with 5 minutes left to tie the game, 24-24, then backed it up with another touchdown in overtime. This was overtime, by the way, 24-24. Northwestern scores a touchdown, shuts down Nebraska, gets that overtime win, 31-24. Northwestern has lost 3 times, but they're playing some good football. They're having a very nice season, and they're going to be number 25 in the country now. Now we're going to look at the college football playoff top 25 rankings and looking ahead to all the matchups that are happening in week 11 for these top teams. Number 1, Georgia's got a great matchup upcoming on the road against number 10, Auburn. This is going to be a really close game as Georgia's definitely on upset alert. That's going to be big time TV. And number 2, Alabama also goes on the road to play against number 16, Mississippi State, as both of our top 2 undefeated SEC teams have some tough teams they got to play on the road. And frankly, the expectation is that one of them will lose. If they both get their victories, if they both come out still undefeated, it's definitely possible, but both these teams are playing in tough games. And number 3, Notre Dame, in probably the matchup of the weekend. On the road against number 7, Miami. Miami is undefeated, looking to make a big statement to the College Football Playoff Committee. And Notre Dame, this is the toughest team left on their schedule, and Notre Dame definitely needs to win out the rest of the year. So we're looking at the loser of this game probably being out of College Football Playoff contention, and the winner is in the driver's seat to get into the College Football Playoff. So this is going to be an incredible matchup. Notre Dame on the road against number 7 Miami. Number 4 Clemson is at home against Florida State in a game that they should win. Number 5 Oklahoma. Wow, do they have a good matchup. Playing at home against number 6 TCU in a game where the entire Big 12 is in the balance here. The eventual Big 12 conference champions probably going to be the winner of this game. You might as well just consider this the Big 12 championship game right here. Number 5 Oklahoma, number 6 TCU. That's going to be a fantastic game. Moving on to TCU, like we just said, they're playing Oklahoma. Number 7 Miami, they're going to be playing Notre Dame at home. Number 8 Wisconsin, they got a really good matchup. They got to play at home against number 20 Iowa. We're going to see if Iowa can pull off back-to-back incredible upsets or if Wisconsin's going to hold on and keep going strong as the undefeated team in the Big Ten. Number 9, Washington is on the road against Stanford. Stanford just fell out of the top 25, but they can still play some good football. Number 10, Auburn, we talked about them. They're going to be at home against Georgia. Number 11, USC goes on the road against Colorado. Number 12, Michigan State plays another good matchup. They're going to be on the road against Ohio State. Number 13, Ohio State, is expected to win. Obviously, they're a better team than Michigan State, despite the way the rankings are falling right now. But maybe Ohio State is going to be in a slump. Maybe they'll lose 2 games in a row. That would definitely be an incredible win for Michigan State if they pulled that off. Number 14, Penn State. Coming off the back-to-back losses, they are going to play in a home game against Rutgers. They have a higher than 90% win probability of taking that one, so expect them to handle Rutgers. Number 15, Oklahoma State, coming off of a loss. They got a really tough matchup. They got to go on the road and play Iowa State. That's going to be a really close game. Oklahoma State should definitely be on upset alert for that one. That's going to be a tough one. Number 16, Michigan State. We talked about them. They're going to be Mississippi State, number 16. Talked about them. They're going to be playing at home against Alabama. Big matchup. Number 17, Virginia Tech. They're going to go on the road and play Georgia Tech, and Virginia Tech should be on upset alert here. This could be back-to-back losses for Va-Tech. Georgia Tech's definitely a really tough team. That'll be a good game. Number 18, UCF. Will be playing at home against Connecticut. Connecticut's not having a great season, so UCF is definitely the heavy favorites to win that one. Number 19, Washington State is going to be on the road against Utah, and Washington State is on upset alert as well. That should be a bit of a coin toss, so Washington State definitely needs to watch out. Number 20, Iowa. Talked about them. They're going on the road to play number 8, Wisconsin. Big game for them. Number 21, Iowa State. We talked about them at home against Oklahoma State. Number 22, Memphis will be our only team in the top 25 with a bye week this week. They won't be playing anyone. Number 23, NC State goes on the road to play Boston College. Number 24, LSU plays at home against Arkansas in a game that we expect LSU to win. And number 25, Northwestern, the other new team on this list besides Iowa, will be at home against Purdue. So this is going to be another fantastic week of college football. Some huge matchups, some fantastic games that we're going to be seeing. Lots and lots of good games are going to be happening this Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to take a look at the conferences and see what are the odds for each team to win their respective conference, as well as some general playoff odds. Start with the Pac-12, as there are going to be 4 teams in the race for the Pac-12 championship. Number 9, Washington's currently in the driver's seat. They have a 43% chance to win the Pac-12, as well as 32% playoff odds. Number 11, USC also has got a 37% chance to win the Pac-12 championship, 7% playoff odds for them. Right now it's looking like it's going to be USC and Washington in that Pac-12 championship matchup. But there are a couple teams. Stanford, currently unranked, but they got a 14% chance to win the conference. They're definitely still in the mix. Number 19, Washington State, holding on to a 5% chance to win the Pac-12 as well, and 1% playoff odds. The SEC is down to just 3 teams, as it's looking like Alabama is going to be playing Georgia in the SEC championship game. Alabama's got a 48% chance to win the conference. Georgia has a 42% chance to win the SEC. And number 10, Auburn, is hanging out with an 11% chance to get into that SEC championship game and take the crown. So it's looking like Alabama versus Georgia, but definitely Auburn has a solid chance of sneaking into it. Depends on their success this week, obviously, playing against Georgia. Alabama's got strong 62% playoff odds. Georgia also 57% odds. And Auburn holding on to 9% playoff odds. The Big Ten is coming down to 3 primary teams. It's looking like number 8 Wisconsin's going to be playing number 13 Ohio State. Wisconsin has a 49% chance to win the Big Ten, 35% playoff odds. Number 13 Ohio State, coming off of a loss, they still have a 45% chance to win the Big Ten and 13% playoff odds. Number 12 Michigan State, coming off of a hot upset, they still have a 5% chance to win the Big Ten. They're going to be playing Ohio State this week, so that's definitely going to be huge for them, and 1% odds of getting into the college football playoff. And there's plenty of teams that actually still are in the mix and have a 1% chance, a sneaky little 1% chance of winning the Big Ten. Penn State, Michigan, Iowa, Northwestern, they all still have a tiny, tiny chance, but it's looking like Wisconsin versus Ohio State in that Big Ten championship game. The Big 12 obviously doesn't have a championship game, but the winner of Oklahoma versus TCU this week is going to go a long way to figuring out who wins this conference. Currently, Oklahoma has a 50% chance to win the Big 12 and 42% playoff odds. Number 6 TCU has a 37% chance to win the Big 12 as well as 23% playoff odds. Number 21 Iowa State still has a 6% chance to win the Big 12. Number 15 Oklahoma State also has a 6% chance to win the Big 12 and 2% playoff odds. So it's looking like Oklahoma or TCU, but both Iowa State and Oklahoma State still have a chance to surprise us. The ACC has come down to 2 teams primarily. Number 4 Clemson and number 7 Miami are probably going to be the 2 teams that are playing in the ACC championship game. Number 4 Clemson has a 62% chance to win the conference, as well as 57% playoff odds. They're looking great. Number 7 Miami has a 36% chance to win the ACC as well, 25% playoff odds. And number 23 NC State hanging out in the background with a 2% chance to surprise us and win the conference. The American Conference is coming down to the number 18 UCF, which has a 50% chance to win the American Conference. Number 22 Memphis, who have a 36% chance to win. And South Florida, Houston, we've seen both of them in the top 25 before. SMU as well. They together have a 14% chance to also sneak in and get that American Conference. And number 3 Notre Dame, obviously they're not in the conference, they're independent, but they have a 29% playoff odds. Now we're going to take a look at the Heisman watch. So there's definitely some movers in this week's Heisman race. Baker Mayfield, after a fantastic 62-point outing from his Oklahoma, is now leading the charge to win the Heisman once again. He's the number 1 guy right now. Right behind him, Bryce Love had a quiet game as the running back from Stanford, still having an outstanding season, as well as Saquon Barkley. His team lost. He had a quiet game as well. So both Bryce Love and Saquon Barkley are holding strong as likely to be the other 2 finalists alongside Baker Mayfield. And despite both of them having their time in the spotlight as potential Heisman winners, they are both in their own slumps. So Bryce Love and Saquon Barkley both hanging out. Khalil Tate, the outstanding dual-threat quarterback from Arizona, is breaking into this Heisman watch as someone that probably a long shot to win the trophy, but you got to keep an eye on these guys. They definitely have the potential to get invited as finalists. That's Khalil Tate, quarterback from Arizona. Josh Adams, the running back from Notre Dame, he's been on this watch before. He's having a very good season. Lamar Jackson, last year's Heisman winner, surprisingly having a season not as good, but he's on the watch. He's having a good year despite his team not playing so well over there, the quarterback of Louisville. And Jonathan Taylor, the big-time power running back from Wisconsin, is in his freshman year, and he's already getting some looks for the Heisman. And definitely if he closes out the year strong, he may get in on that finalist for the Heisman as well. Now we're going to look real quick at how many losses there are in the college football landscape. There's still 5 undefeated teams. That is Alabama and Georgia, Miami, and Wisconsin, as well as UCF. UCF, obviously, in the American Conference. That doesn't mean much, but Wisconsin, Miami, Alabama, Georgia. That's what you have left for the undefeated teams. With 1 loss, there's this little collection of 1-loss teams, Clemson and Oklahoma. Notre Dame and Washington, TCU as well. All these are powerful one-loss teams. Memphis, South Florida, as well as Toledo actually all have one loss as well. The two-loss category, definitely quite a few more teams. You got USC in there. You got Auburn in there. You got Mississippi State in there. Both Penn State, Ohio State, Oklahoma State. Michigan still in the two-loss category. Washington State, Michigan State, Virginia Tech. All these are very talented teams that have two losses on the year. Army in Ohio, San Diego State, Boise State, and Troy also in that two-loss category. Now we're going to look at the three-loss category. There are a lot of really good teams that just happen to have three losses this year, and it's worth taking a look at them as well. LSU, Stanford, Northwestern, Iowa, South Carolina, Arizona, NC State, Iowa State, West Virginia. Now we're going to get into teams that aren't as good as that first category, but they're having very nice seasons, obviously, because they only have three losses. Virginia, for example, Houston, SMU, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Northern Illinois, Fresno State, Wyoming, UAB, and Marshall. Now we're going to look at college football playoff. We're going to look at the rest of the year for a lot of the contenders. Keep in mind we have three categories here for the teams left in contention for the college football playoff. Not dead even after a loss. This is the small group of teams that would be looking very fine, almost locked into the college football playoff if they can win out the rest of their year. And if they lose, they technically still have a chance. Probably not a good chance, but they still have a shot of losing and then still getting into the college football playoff. Then there's this category number 2 called Destiny in Your Hands. These are the teams that need to win out the rest of the year. If they can win out the rest of the year and win all their games left on their schedule, they're actually looking pretty good to get into that college football playoff. But if they lose, they're practically dead. Then the last category are the long shot teams. Those are the teams, it's win everything and get lucky. So they absolutely need to win the rest of the games they have this year and then get some help. Even if they win, their chances are under 50%. So now we're going to look at last week's categories. See, the teams in bold are teams that lost last week. Ohio State, obviously, they were in the not dead even after loss category, and they did lose. And they're not dead. They still have a 13% chance, surprisingly, of sneaking into that college football playoff. But, obviously, that is bleak for them. Notre Dame, they actually got a win, but they're going to be moved down because of other stuff happening into the Destiny in Your Hands category. Notre Dame, if you know anything about college football, you would think that they absolutely can't afford to lose, that it's really weird that Notre Dame would be able to lose and then still sneak into the college football playoff. And the reason is that if they lose, their odds fall to about 5%, and bouncing back and forth between 4% and 5 and 8 and 7 means that they'll keep going back and forth between the technically not dead category and then the absolutely need to win out category. So Notre Dame falls into the Destiny in Your Hands category for this week. We had 5 teams lose in the Destiny in Your Hands category. Definitely teams dropping out of contention here. Virginia Tech, they lost. They're pretty much dead. Stanford had a loss. They're pretty much dead. LSU couldn't win. They're dead. Iowa State got upset. They're dead. Oklahoma State lost to Oklahoma. Their chances fall to only 2%. They're not looking that good either. TCU, I think TCU actually moved up into the not dead category. So I think TCU's been playing so well. They've been looking so dominant that they would obviously benefit if they won out the rest of the year, but they still have a chance of losing and sneaking into the college football playoff. Now our last category, the win everything and get lucky teams. These are teams that are already long shots, so if they lose, they're definitely gone. And Penn State, bye-bye. Penn State's dead. Arizona had a loss, they're dead. NC State had a loss, that team's dead. South Carolina lost, that team's dead. So we lost a lot of contenders. By the looks of it, we have 12, I believe 17, a little bit more than that, maybe 19, maybe 20 teams left in contention, and only only a solid group of about 10 teams that really have a strong chance. So the field is getting thin here for the college football playoff. We're getting near the end of the year, and for 4 spots, 10 teams is pretty good. 10 teams that we expect, and a lot of long shots that would be a surprise if they snuck in there. So we're going to look at all the teams. We're going to start with the not dead even after loss category. Number 1, Georgia. They got to play Auburn, which is going to be huge for them, and obviously they got the SEC championship ahead. If they win out, they're definitely in. If they lose, however, they still have a 50-50 shot of getting into the college football playoff because this team's really good. So if they play in the SEC championship game and they play a great game against Alabama, then expect them to probably sneak into the college football playoff. Same thing with number 2, Alabama. They got to play LSU and Mississippi State and Auburn. LSU they took care of. They're not playing that anymore. But they got to play Mississippi State this week as well as Auburn and win the SEC championship game. That's a brutal schedule for them. If they win out, if they go undefeated, clearly they're in the college football playoff. If they lose, however, still got a 44% chance. It depends on where they lose. If they lose early and then still get crowned SEC champion, then heck yeah, they're in, And if they lose in a close game to Georgia in the SEC championship game, then also they're in. So if they're a team that definitely can get into that college football playoff with a loss. Number 4, Clemson has a fairly easy rest of the schedule, but they got an ACC championship game coming up. That's going to be huge for them. If they win out and cruise through the rest of the year, they have a 98% chance of getting into the college football playoff. So they are looking great if they can just win out the rest of the year. Clemson is a dominant team. If they do lose, however, somewhere along the schedule, they're going to have a 23.5% chance of the college football playoff. They are not dead, but it wouldn't be looking that good for Clemson as a 2-loss team. So that would be Clemson's outlook. Number 5, Oklahoma. They got a big game coming up. If they can take out TCU and then win their last 2 games, they would be the Big 12 champion, and that would give them a 96% chance of getting into that CFP. 96% is definitely good for them, so if they can get over that hump and take out TCU this week, Oklahoma looks like a strong contender. If they do drop a game somewhere here, however, they're not dead because this is a really good team, but they have their chances fall to 15.5%. Still, also in the not dead category, is TCU, number 6. If they beat Oklahoma and take out Texas Tech and Baylor, they have a 91% chance of getting into the CFP. That is pretty good for them. That would mean they're the Big 12 champion as well. Expect to see them in the college football playoff if they can beat Oklahoma and win the rest of the year. If they drop one of these games, it's not looking so good for TCU. They only have a 9% chance, but 9% they could still make it happen. Now we have our last 2 undefeated teams here. Number 7, Miami. They're playing that huge game against Notre Dame. If they can win that and beat Virginia and Pittsburgh and then win the ACC championship game as an undefeated team, they absolutely are going to be in the CFP. But it's a really tough schedule for them. That ACC championship game, Clemson's probably waiting for them. So we can expect them to lose somewhere along this line. If they do lose, their chances unfortunately drop to 15%. 15% not so good for them, but still keeping the dream alive here. Number 8, Wisconsin. Got to play Iowa as well as Michigan, 2 tough teams. And they got to play probably Ohio State, possibly Michigan State in the Big Ten championship game. If they win, if they have that fantastic undefeated season, give them a 95% odds of getting into the college football playoff. Consider them almost locked in because that would be a great season for them. If they lose somewhere along here, it gets a lot tougher because we mentioned a lot of fantastic teams that are already above Wisconsin. So even as a 1-loss team, their chances fall to only 14%. Doesn't look so good for them, but 14% they still got a chance, especially if they can win that Big 10 championship. Now we're moving on to our next category, the good old destiny in your hands category, the teams that really can't afford to lose, but if they do win, then it's looking great for them. Number 3, Notre Dame, for example. They got to play against Miami as well as Navy and Stanford. 3 really tough games for the rest of the year. If they can win all those games, they got a 2 out of 3 chance, a 66% chance of getting into that CFP. It would be hard for the committee not to put them in with big wins over Miami, big wins over Stanford. So they're in a position where the College Football Playoff Committee is probably hoping that they lose, because if they lose, their chances fall to 4%. They're pretty much dead, and they don't have to worry about that controversy, because Notre Dame is playing some great football. They haven't lost in a long time, and they got a tough schedule ahead, so that's something to keep an eye on. Number 9, Washington, currently in the driver's seat in the Pac-12. They got a tough game against Stanford. Utah's going to be a challenging game. Washington State's going to be a very difficult game, and the Pac-12 championship. If they slam dunk the rest of the year and get 4 wins on the board, they have an 84% chance of getting into the CFP. They would be a strong contender from the Pac-12. But with this really difficult schedule, they simply can't afford to lose. If they lose anywhere along the way here, their chances fall to 4%, and that is going to be it for them. Number 10, Auburn, also. They got to play Georgia and Alabama. So if they upset Georgia and then turn around and upset Alabama, which would be mind-blowingly difficult. Obviously, this is the most difficult remaining schedule in college football for number 10 Auburn. To have to play Georgia and Alabama, they do get a nice cupcake in between there. If they win both of these games, and then probably they'll be in the SEC championship game, that's not guaranteed for them, and take care of that, they have an 87% chance of getting in. I would make it a 100% chance for them. If they lose, which may just happen next week, obviously they're playing the number 1 team in the country, then they're pretty much dead. Chances fall to 1%. So Auburn's in a funny position as far as teams go. And hey, those are the top 10 teams in the country that we just mentioned. And those are your 10 teams that we are pretty sure it's going to be 4 of those 10 teams in the college football playoff. You're definitely going to see that list of teams get smaller also, as there are some huge matchups happening between them. Oklahoma's playing TCU, Notre Dame's playing Miami, Auburn's playing Georgia. Those are 3 freaking top 10 matchups. It's going to be a very different list next week. These are the long shot teams, win everything and get lucky. Number 11, USC, if they can cruise and win the Pac-12 championship game, then they got a solid 29% chance of sneaking into the college football playoff. Number 12, Michigan State, if they can get an outstanding upset against Ohio State this week and then go on and win the Big Ten championship game, they would have a 31% chance. They would be looking like they got a shot as well for the college football playoff. Same goes for Ohio State. If they can slam dunk against Michigan State, if they can take out Michigan, if they can win that Big Ten championship game, they would be a strong candidate to college football playoff as well, despite that loss to Iowa. So they'd have a 37% chance of getting in. So they'd be looking pretty good too, but obviously this assumes that they cruise through the rest of the year. Number 15, Oklahoma State. They got to play Iowa State, but then they got a couple easy games after that. If they can win these last 3 games, they're going to have a 4% chance of getting in. Number 16, Mississippi State. If Mississippi State can get that big upset against Alabama, then they got a couple more matchups. They actually won't go to that SEC championship game, but if they win out, then they'll be in consideration. They'll have a 6% chance of getting into the college football playoff. Number 18, UCF, currently undefeated. If UCF can win the rest of the year and be crowned undefeated as American Conference champions, they got a 1% chance. they're going to be considered, they're undefeated. So, number 19, Washington State has to play Utah and Washington, 2 very difficult matchups. If they can win both of those, then go to the Pac-12 championship game and win that, they would be the candidate from the Pac-12, and they would be looking pretty good with a nice 25% chance of getting into the playoff, which they would definitely take. So Washington State, got to look out for them. They're still on the radar. Number 21, Iowa State, despite a tough loss, if they can get a big upset against Oklahoma State this week and finish off the year with 2 more good wins, they would still be in the conversation. They would have a 10% chance of getting in. And 2 more unranked teams here. If Stanford can get that huge upset against Washington, then take out California, and then get a massive upset over Notre Dame, then they would have to get lucky to get invited to the Pac-12 championship game. But even if they do that and be crowned Pac-12 champion or otherwise finish off the season fantastic, they would only have an 8% chance because they're a 3-loss team. But 8%, they'd get considered. They still are in the mix, assuming they can win the rest of the season. And surprisingly, Michigan. If Michigan can beat Wisconsin and Ohio State, the Titans of the Big Ten, back-to-back, that would be super impressive. And despite being a 3-loss team, they would have a 2% chance of getting into the playoff. They would not be able to go to the Big Ten championship game, though. That is your categories. That's your college football playoff contenders. That's your college football week 10 recap. Come back next week because it's going to look so different next week. Stay tuned for all the exciting games we have coming up this weekend. Go forth and spread beauty and light. Thanks for watching, sports fans. See ya on the next video.